every night has a theme, and the theme for tonight is trip, and it's part of ColumbaFest. So we thought we'd invite Joe Love from the ColumbaFest team to say a little bit more about ColumbaFest and to give you all a welcome.
Good evening, friends. Absolutely wonderful to see everyone again. Welcome if this is your first time or your second or third time at a ColumbaFest event this year. You're really welcome. And we're absolutely delighted to be in partnership with 10 by 9 tonight for something a bit different to our last two nights. Padraig and Paul are the absolute experts in this, and it's their baby, and we're absolutely delighted to hand over to them. But lovely to have you all enjoy the night. And just to give you a wee heads up for tomorrow, we have our next ColumbaFest session in the morning tomorrow from 10 till 11 with Alison Phipps. Quite a serious, weighty session again about migration and the system that's going on and the things we need to learn. And then we've got our Glasgow walk for those of you that are in the more local area to us here. If you want to come and walk by the Clyde, we'll see you around St Enoch Square from 2 o'clock onwards. That will be lovely. But back to tonight, Padraig and Paul, thank you for being in partnership with us. We're really looking forward to tonight, and over to you.
Thanks very much, Joe. So our first story for tonight is from Leanne Clelland. She is originally from here, but she went across there a long time ago, and she belongs to both places now. And we're really looking forward to a story from the magnificent Leanne. So over to you, Leanne, and then we'll highlight you, and you can unmute yourself if you haven't already.
Hello.
Hi, Leanne. Walk away, we can hear you.
Let's go. Good. So we're at that stage in our family life where parenting has morphed into personnel management. And that means that most days are spent driving a boy somewhere for something. These boys each have a different approach to car journeys. One thinks that the front seat is a soapbox upon which he will declare the injustices of not yet being a pro golfer, due to the fact that his parents haven't built a putting green in the garden, installed a chipping net on the roof, and won't fly him to the World Golf Championships in South Carolina. He's 8. The oldest boy uses his time in the front to explain at length why the world is amazing and cruel, ununderstandable, fascinating and complex. And the other one doesn't talk at all usually, which is a relief because no one can deal with more than 2 gobshites in any family. But recently I was taking the quiet one to an interview at the School of Sport in Glasgow. He has dreamed of this interview for a year, and getting to this stage in the process had taken all of us by surprise. So much so that we hadn't really prepared him for the interview, and I certainly wasn't about to start cramming for it in the car. And he was quiet. It was hard to know in that moment if he was the sort of quiet which plots great comedy or certain doom. But I decided to break the silence with a story which I'm about to tell you. When I was 15, my dad, who would have been a year or two older than I am now, had a heart attack. So that really broke the mood in the car. He was still quiet, but he was alert. My sisters and I spent the next few months tending to Dad as he waited for news about surgery. We set and cleared fires in the living room, lifted the shopping in from the car, and tidied up after dinner. He rustled behind his daily newspaper. We crept about in deference to his dodgy heart. At around the same time, once a week after school, I would visit the home of an old couple who used to be missionaries in Spain. The old man, Mr. McManus, was housebound, and my visits meant that his wife could go and get the shopping in. I would arrive, and she would totter off with her silver hair and tiny glasses and her wheelie shopper. And Mr. McManus and I would talk about the days when he used to share the gospel to the Catholics in Spain. He had a terrible habit of unexpectedly falling asleep. And I would stare in panic at his papery cheeks, willing them to fill with air, unable to bear the embarrassment of having to tell his wife that he had died on my watch while she was buying the spuds. In the meantime, my school decided it was time for our year group to go on work experience. This normally meant that we landed ourselves in a local office for a week and did a bit of stapling and filing. I had chosen 5 languages at GCSE, and in those days, the only career option for a language student was to be a teacher. I had no notion of being a teacher. I had also worked in my dad's office for the odd summer, so stapling and filing held no thrill for me whatsoever. And in any case, in those days, no one on the continent wanted to trade with the troubled north of Ireland. So not for the first or the last time, I was a conundrum to my careers teacher. The McManuses suggested that I would go to Spain for work experience. I was to stay with a family they knew and pretend to be an English assistant in a school for a couple of weeks. And without hesitation, I agreed. Now, in hindsight, this was a remarkable decision because I was a child who couldn't go to a sleepover without needing collected in the middle of the night. I used to go to an adventure camp in the next town so that when I was unbearably homesick, my mum could drive past reassuringly. But here it was. I was to go to Spain, to live with strangers, speak faltering Spanish for a fortnight, and I couldn't be more excited. We continued to do the heavy lifting and the tea serving at home when news came of Dad's appointment. He was to have a triple bypass, which is an operation not without its risks in the 80s, during the time that I was due to be on my Spanish adventure. There was no discussion or hand-wringing or soul-searching that I can remember. He was off to get new tubes in. I was still going to Spain. Mum drove me to the airport and we probably didn't talk much on the way. At least Mum might have talked. I probably said very little, plotting either great comedy or a certain doom as we drove from Clorian to Aldergrove. Now, in those days, Ulster's International Airport was hidden away in the countryside, accessible only by 2 A roads, one from the north and one from the east. We had, like all good Northern Irish people, built in enough travel time for stopping at least 2 army checkpoints. There was almost always one at the Frosses. So that's a great stretch of road which weaved in and out of sprawling fields and where dozens of dark trees bend themselves over the road to greet their leafy neighbours on the other side. And there was always a checkpoint at the airport. The soldier would wave you forward, leaning towards the car, bending over the gun which was slung across his chest, and would ask where you were off to. We were Protestants. It was like having a friend come to wave you off every time you left the island. I know that that's crazy talk, but they were crazy times. But as we approached the airport on this journey, a soldier waved us down to inform us that there was a suspected bomb on the road ahead. There is no risk to security at the airport, he said, but you can't take your car any further. So we were about half a mile from the airport door, and I had a choice. I could either go home, forget about the trip to Spain, spend the fortnight pacing a sterile ward and waiting for my dad to get better, or I could grab the suitcase and run. The boy in the car beside me is still quiet, but when I glance to look at him, his eyes are out on stalks. I'm not sure what's going on in his head most of the time, but right now I'm pretty sure he's weighing up all the options. The heart surgery, the possible bomb, the going home, and the image of me running to the airport. And he's thinking, nah, there's no way she ran to the airport. And the skin around his eyes is crinkled up as he tries to see into his own future by listening hard to my past. And he squints and squirms as if perhaps to say, oh, dear God, if I have any sporting genes, let them not be from her. And he's right. Of course I didn't run. But I did grab that suitcase and I didn't look back.